Us having a quorum, I will call this meeting to order. And I lost it again. I had the Zoom script up and I lost it. So basically,
Terry, the record button's not on either. Based on my screen anyway.
Zoom recording. Okay.
There we go.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. With that,
Commander Reedy, Terry.
yeah, would you please? I keep letting people in. They keep pinging me.
Sure. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access Channel. The town of Lunenburg, in response to the COVID-19 coronavirus, is currently following the guidance from the Lunenburg Board of Health and Massachusetts Department of Public Health and the CDC regarding the virus and steps communities can take to prevent the spread. And all town facilities are currently closed to the public or open by appointment. In accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, all public meetings are being conducted remotely. This meeting will be broadcast live through the local access cable, on Facebook Live, and on the public access Facebook page, and will be found on the Lunenburg Access YouTube channel within 24 hours after the meeting. The following information is provided for members of the public that would like to participate in the meeting remotely. To participate remotely from a computer, please use the Zoom app with the meeting ID 867-488-64511. And from a telephone, you can dial toll-free 888-475-4499 with the same meeting number 867-488-64511 and pound. If you are not registered with Zoom, you will be asked for your name and email address. No participant ID is needed. If you're dialing in, just press pound when asked. Telephone users may dial *9 to request to speak after joining the meeting. Computer and app users may use the raised hand feature to speak. There you go, Terry.
Thank you, Peter. Also, just want to indicate that if we do take any votes tonight, they will be taken by roll call, this is a remote meeting. So tonight's agenda will include presentations of the department budgets from the Council on Aging, the library, and the land use director. We will be beginning that as soon as we go through announcements and public comments. I have no announcements other than that's the first budget, departmental budgets that we're going to hear from. And just a reminder, next week we start at 6 to review the debt with our financial consultant and also OPEB with the actuary. And that will begin at 6 o'clock. 7 o'clock, we'll hear from police and fire. So going back to tonight, do we have any public comments from anybody on the committee? No hands. Okay. Do we have any public comment from anybody in the public? No hands there either. So we'll go ahead and proceed. So Chris, if you could please bring up the presentation. Sue Doherty from the Council on Aging or from the Eagle House will be here to present tonight.
All set?
Yep.
Okay, I am Sue Doherty. I'm the director at the Lunenburg Council on Aging, and here tonight for the Finance Committee budget presentation, which isn't really very large. We did not ask for an increase in anything this year. So if we could just go to the next slide. So we are level funded. FY22, we were at $167,318, and last year was $143,888, and the increase is just all salary. So, next slide, please. Just a little on what we did last year in FY '20. We had 70 volunteers give 1,743.25 hours of their time and talents. We served 1,031 people age 60 and older. We delivered, and Heather will appreciate this because she's one of our new Meals on Wheels drivers, 5,187 meals to 61 Lunenburg residents. And that all happened in FY '20. If we can go to the next slide. So what do? I think you all know what we do. We are community outreach. We lend a kind ear for people. We listen to everybody. We're health and wellness. We're transportation. We leisure and therapy and support groups and information and referral. We do a lot of things that people don't realize what we do. We're just not bingo anymore. And we do it all on the budget we're given with the town and along with formula grant fundings too from the state. You know, everything is going really good considering COVID. And if you go on to the next slide, I can show you some of what we do. So as of March 13th of last year, we were closed to the public completely, van service, everything. We started opening up again slowly at the beginning of the summer. We didn't let people inside for activities until mid-July, and no more than 10 people. We chose certain activities, for instance, health and wellness. You can see in the upper left-hand corner, that's our chair yoga class. And DPW provides us with all the PPE, and you can see on the floor the 6-foot distancing. Nobody gets in without wearing a mask. They have their temperatures taken. There's sanitizer everywhere. You know, we go through a little screening process with them. We did outside events, socially distanced. You can see the people that are sitting next to each other. They're from the same family or the caregivers. We did social distance bingo, which is interesting. Upper right-hand corner, there's one of our favorite ladies, Mrs. Chaffee, with her winnings of fresh vegetables and fruit. Elsa, one of our wonderful employees in the kitchen delivering coffee. We do coffee drive-through. Just a picture of how we social distance the big room down there. And then another coffee one with Pauline and Sandy, our meal site manager, and Elsa again. So we can go on to the next. So we've had a lot of help with financial donations from different people and being able to use our town budget, our municipal budget program line for things that we had to change. The town of Lunenburg, Massachusetts formula grant funds, we were allowed to change how we were going to spend things in that. COVID Cares Act funding. I applied for a couple of grants, which we got from Community Foundation of North Central Mass, Central Mass Agency on Aging. Our 501c3 support group, the Eagle House Supporters, they're taking a hit also now because they can't fundraise, but they are still backing us up 100%. Different outside organizations such as Pilgrim Covenant Church, Lunenburg Friendly Seniors, Leominster Order of the Odd Fellows and Daughters of Rebecca, Turkey Hill Family Lions Club, Lunenburg Police and Fire Department, Salvation Army, PJ Keating Corporation, private donations to the Council on Aging gift fund from the public, the Worcester County Sheriff's Department, and donation of goods and services from local nursing homes and rehabilitation centers who supply like grab and go, curbside, take home crafts that you do at home. And I would be remiss if I did not mention in the beginning of COVID, we had Lydia Gravel from the Lunenburg Public Library organized a big mask making brigade, and people were given free masks. You know, they sewed them, all handmade. Another lady in Lunenburg, she donated, tons of masks to us to give out, and we were giving them out with the Salvation Army food boxes that we had. It was really interesting. You learn how to change what you're doing very quickly and learn how to make it work. If we can go to the next slide. So, like I just said, we roll with the changes, and one of the great sayings that we like is you don't have to reinvent the wheel, you just have to attach it to a new wagon and make it work. So our lunches that we did inside, coffee that we did inside, we turned them into curbside pickups. We do Tuesday coffee shop outside where we do prepackaged donuts and coffee. Thursdays, we do lunch, which we prepare like a soup and sandwich. People donate to that, different organizations such as Pilgrim Covenant Church and the Lunenburg Friendly Seniors. We were able to use grant funding to purchase gift cards to Hannaford to purchase all of the supplies needed for these events. And through our program line in the town budget, which was supposed to go to pay for instructors, which we couldn't have naturally. Outdoor entertainment, Eagle House Supporters comes in and pays for that. We had to rent tents for that. We did the socially distanced indoor programs. COVID-19 vaccine reservations, that's new. That's gone now. We are no longer taking reservations. The Neshoba Board of Health Clinic will have one more clinic for our Lunenburg residents and the other communities that come underneath their umbrella next Wednesday. And the town of Lunenburg is only allowed 16 vaccines each time. And we're lucky because we have a higher population than the other towns who only get 12. So it's been interesting. So we had that pulled out from underneath us today. So that is what it is. We keep moving on. We've gone into the Zoom world with the book club, bingo. Pauline is doing a How Have You Been, like a coffee bean, coffee shop to get people together. We put out tutorial videos on how to get into the Zoom programs. We are going to be doing our first memory cafe through Zoom next month with entertainment. So that's going to be good. It's going to be different. Instead of friendly visiting, where we have volunteers go into the households to see people, we are now doing friendly phone calls, and that's coming along really good. Furniture replacement, funding through COVID-19 fund, COVID Care Act fund, and Eagle House Supporters. We were able to replace all of our cloth banquet chairs with vinyl and some vinyl like reception armchairs that we use for chair exercises. It's much easier to sanitize afterwards and clean. And with the, like I said, when we were doing socially distanced indoor bingo, we purchased throwaway bingo cards. And we had our own daubers, which we would throw into a solution of sanitizer afterwards. We just rolling with the changes. It's been fun. If we can go to the next one. So this, these numbers on the right are taken from July 1st, 2020 to February 8th, 2021. And these are the different programs in the amount of people. So basically, since July 1st, 259 people we've served 3,002 times with our different programs. Over to the right, you can see I broke them down into what we were doing in armchair travel, an outdoor storyteller, outdoor music. We did a program on World War II letters for the fitness and exercise. I mean, you can see it right there. The walking club, Strongest Seniors is the chair yoga, and we started doing Tai Chi in the park across the street at Memorial Drive. And when the weather got bad, we moved inside. We kind of shut everything down again in November because when it started to surge again. So that's what we've been doing. And the drive-through grab and go lunches, we have more people show up for lunch than we did when they were eating inside. We're doing 50 people every Thursday, and it's always free of charge. We haven't charged anybody anything, not a dime. Thanks to, like I said, our program line and all the donations that have come in. We just did take-home tea party yesterday, which was a lot of fun. Everybody loved that. Coloring kits. We did emergency bags with flashlights, batteries, Mylar blankets, Red Cross handbook, disaster preparedness for seniors, developed by seniors, caregiver toolkits for the caregivers of dementia, Alzheimer's clients. I mean, you can read it all. This is what we've been doing constantly throughout the COVID-19. So we're really, the budget, I'm not asking for anything. I don't need anything now. We're doing really good considering. I meet with other Central Mass once a week via Zoom, and it's amazing. Some of their town halls aren't even open. They don't have any support. They haven't seen their town manager. They haven't spoken to anybody since COVID started. So we're pretty lucky here, and we appreciate it. And to the next, I think, and that's it. And that's all I have for you. But I do want to say we did mail cards. I don't know if you can see them or not. I'm going to hold it up to over 2,000 households in Lunenburg with the person age 60 and older in it, just to let them know, because you can't call every single person on the telephone. So we did the next best thing by sending this one out to every household. And that was like over 2,000. We definitely have over 3,000 senior citizens in town right now. And which will bring me just to the next thing that I will inform you about. Our formula grant funding is going to be cut by the state to $9 per elder this year, next fiscal year. Right now it's $12 per elder. As long as the federal census comes in on time, hopefully by July 1st, we'll be okay. If it doesn't, right now at $12 per elder with the 2,106 official count from the federal census in 2010, we are able to add an extra $25,272 to our budget. I know with the 3,000, more than 3,000 seniors, I'm just throwing 3,000 in there. If it stayed at the $12, that would have given us a bump up to $36,000 to add to the budget. But so if the census does not come in time and we're down to the $9 that the governor wants to do, that puts us down to $18,954, which isn't horrible. We can live with that. We'll work with it. But, it is what it is.
Right.
So are there any questions or?
Yeah, there will be. I see a couple of hands up, and before I get to them, I just wanted to throw two things out there. One was just to clarify for people who might be confused by the vaccines, that if you did get a first shot, you will get a second shot. So
Yes,
don't worry.
absolutely.
And so I just wanted to clarify that. And the other, I did also note that the Eagle House supporters were running a fundraiser that had to do with pet photos. So if you have a pet and
Yes.
you want to get in on that, I don't know if you could speak to that at all, but there is at least a fundraiser going on for the Eagle House supporters given the COVID situation.
There is, and from what I understand, it's a $5 entry fee, and there's like 3 categories, and I can't think of the top of my head what they are. But I will have some applications available outside at the Eagle House. We put up outside brochure holders on the wall outside of the center, so, because people can't come in and out. And so the supporters have one out there, and I'll make sure there's some out there. And they also have them spread out throughout the town too. I think at Bad Larry's and a couple of other places in town, I'm not sure.
Right, and it's
So-
posted on Facebook as well, so there's
Yes.
plenty of places, plenty of opportunities to get involved in that if people so choose. Dave Passios, your hand is up.
Yep, Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street. Sue, when I get an itemized budget like we were given there a couple of days ago, I always go line by line. And if anything jumps out at me, I just ask a quick question about it. And the only number that jumped out at me was mileage reimbursement.
Right.
I just can't wrap my head around what that would be unless I get an explanation.
Okay, that is, I would say 99.9% for Meals on Wheels drivers. They get a stipend of $11.50 a week for mileage. They have a very long route. Some don't take it, some do. They are volunteers. But with everything going on with COVID, I mean, they've always had a mileage reimbursement line in there. Usually, some of it gets turned back to the town. But that's basically, we have, I want to say 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10 Meals on Wheels drivers. And like I said, a couple of them don't take the mileage stipend and the other ones do.
Makes total sense. Thank you. One
You're
other quick
welcome.
question. Is there any documentation that could be available? I know Michelle, one of our previous members, was really keen on knowing revenue sources from outside the town budget. Do you have a sheet that we could get? We don't need it tonight, but I'm just wondering if we could get that information sometime in the near future.
I do, actually. I have it attached to a narrative that I had. I absolutely, I do have it, and I can get it to you. I
Okay,
can get it to you
appreciate it.
tomorrow.
Great. That's super. Thank you. That's all I
You're
have.
welcome.
Okay,
Wait,
Peter?
just
Oh,
to,
I'm sorry.
we've gotten from outside donations with the grants and from different organizations, upwards to $5,000 in donations to go towards the drive-through events and things like that. So everything could remain free for the elders during COVID.
Right. Michelle's concern was always, and we've been fortunate that those sources haven't dried up over the last year with the situation we've been in. But she was really concerned that if something catastrophic happened and all of those sources dried up, we wanted to be ready and aware of how that would affect your operations.
Right. Well, luckily, we have our 501c3. They have not been able to fundraise, but they do get donations. They charge a membership fee. They get their money that way. They have donations in memory of loved ones who have passed. I do know they got a pretty good sizable donation in the other day, just from somebody who appreciated everything we've been doing for them during COVID. I mean, it's amazing. The people are very generous out there. And I know it could dry up. You never know what's going to happen. Community Foundation of North Central Mass, they have been pretty consistent with giving grant money. You know, it's whatever I ask for, they usually say yes. Central Mass Agency on Aging, and also the Massachusetts Councils on Aging. They come up with different grant programs, and it's just right now, I have money in my budget to spend. I don't want to keep tapping into writing more grants for the end of the year. because I won't be able to spend it. I mean, I'm in a unique position right now where I'm pretty good where I'm sitting right now for the rest of the fiscal year. And when the grants come up again in the summertime and throughout the fall, I will be right back at it again too. So,
And actually, and I think part of the questioning was going to the money that comes from the state on the assessment that's based on the number of seniors in town. Is that something that's reflected in the budget, or is that reflected in your programs?
it's not reflected in my budget. It's, it comes outside of the budget. I pay 2 employees out of that. I pay for trainings out of that. I pay for office supplies, because you can say my office supply line is $600, which is not a lot for what we do. So I probably have maybe $2,000 in my formula grant line for office supplies. Trainings, they pay for, we have what we call my senior center. It's a sign-in system that we get all our statistics from. And they are $1,200 a year renewal fee to, it's website based, but it's really an awesome tool to get figures, and it's worth every single penny of it. That's about it with that. Just paid employees, programs, office supplies. When we need new furniture or new equipment, for instance, I bought a laminator so we could laminate signs. During COVID, you know, people don't touch and all this stuff. Postage, things like that.
Okay, Peter Beardmore.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
You mentioned that you're in pretty good shape in terms of spending for this year. Are there any lines from the current fiscal year that are going to be underspent as a result of the pandemic and inability to run programs?
The mileage, I think, will be a little underspent. Well, maybe not, because we never stopped delivering Meals on Wheels during COVID. When we didn't, we sent the volunteers home, and the staff delivered Meals on Wheels, and they got mileage for it. If I'm guessing, if I could guess right now, I would say we might turn back $1,500.
Okay. Are there any acute needs that have arisen as a result of the pandemic that have been unmet or unaddressed through, you know, various funding sources that we've discussed, CARES Act or what have you?
Not at all. Not at all. We worked with Karen Brochu, and with the COVID, the CARES Act, the Eagle House support is paid for part of the vinyl chairs, and I was going to use the Council on Aging gift fund to pay for the other half of them. And she was able to get it under the CARES Act fund, so that left our gift fund alone, which was good. That was a help. But I really have not had a problem. I'm telling you, it's a unique situation. And when I talk to the other directors, I don't even want to say anything anymore, because I feel awful that it's so good here.
Well, it's good to hear that, and I think you're right about the generosity of our community and people's willingness to get involved. I think is a real testament to the town. I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway because I know that people are watching at home. How does one donate and or join donate to or join the Eagle House supporters?
Outside on the wall in that box that I mentioned, there's membership forms that they can fill out and mail back, and that's how you join. Their membership runs August 1st to the end of July. Or you could just make a random donation. You fill out a form with your name, and they take care of it all, and they have their own accounts and whatnot. And they have been great. No matter what I need, I go to them every year with a wish list, of, what I'd like to spend on programs or things like that. And I have no problem with them. They always are very, willing to help us out, and that's what they're there for.
Do you submit an accounting of your off-budget spending? How does that get, how does that get accounted for?
For the municipal?
Yeah, like you mentioned, that you're paying employees and running programs that are off budget as a result
Right.
of donations. My question is are you the only person that sees that accounting, or does Karen?
No, it goes right
or-
to Karen, to the town accountant. Everything I do is on Munis, so I have to put in for POs and show receipts and invoices, the whole 9 yards. With the Eagle House supporters, same thing. I give copies of invoices of, if I have to spend out of pocket and get reimbursed, they get my credit card, all the receipts, everything. I keep everything. I take copies of everything. Karen can attest to that. And then with the Munis, there's always a record there, and I keep my own Excel sheets going every year so I can keep up with it and I don't go over the budget.
Okay. And then lastly, and this is just a comment, and I'll be making this for every budget that comes in front of us. We went through a spirited debate last year that I don't think we ever resolved around the definitions of level services and level funding. Clearly, you've level funded all of the program dollars, but there is not, we're not level funding personnel lines. There's a 4.2% increase in personnel at a budget level, and over year for year personnel lines, we're looking at a 4.6% increase. I understand that's all, programmatized through your existing contracts and step increases and that kind of thing. But I do think that it's important to point out that the town is funding a 4.6% increase in personnel with respect to the Council on Aging.
Absolutely.
Evan,
Hi, Sue. Just a couple of quick questions. The first one is just off of the budget list again, and it was just sort of my own clarification. What is the line item for longevity? What does that actually do?
That happens in the salary admin and the employees. When you're there 10 years, you start accumulating longevity pay. So I am the longest employee there, and I've been there since 1996. So hence the longevity pay. My administrative assistant isn't up there yet. She's been here for 5 years, and everybody else is under 5 years. So that's what the longevity pay is. But I do believe, and the personnel committee has met, and they're having a meeting next week about putting a cap on it all. So.
Okay. Has that been reflected in the 5-year and 10-year plans by any chance?
Karen, can you answer that?
I would say the answer to that question at this time is no, because it would require a town meeting vote in order to make the change to the plan. So the personnel committee is scheduled to meet, and they will make the recommendation, and the article would go to town meeting, and if it passes, that's when it could be reflected in the plans going forward.
Okay. All right. Thank you. The only other question I have then is just sort of, I know with the whole COVID situation going on, I know at least for younger kids and whatnot, mental health has been kind of a large issue. Is there room in this budget to address that moving forward? Should the vaccine rollout take longer than expected or anything like that? Is there sort of a cushion to sort of offer mental health services and whatnot and support for beyond what's already offered for the seniors in the town?
Well, currently we have an outreach coordinator and she reaches out to a lot of people. For instance, during COVID, we all made phone calls to as many people as we could. We did hundreds of people that we had phone numbers for. And like I said, we did this mailing right here to everybody for reaching out to the people, just to let them know that we're here and what do you need and whatnot. We have support groups. We have grief support groups. We have dementia Alzheimer support group. Well, it's not a support group, it's counseling. And, you know, we do what we can. In the budget, well, Pauline's she's a paid employee. She's our outreach coordinator. She's also a health insurance counselor. So that's called SHINE, Serving Health Information Needs of Everyone. So when people's insurance change as they get older and they get into Medicare, she just finished this training in the summer, and she can counsel them on what's good for them and their health insurance plans and stuff like that. But mental health wise, like with a nurse or anything like that, is that what you're talking of? Professional help?
Just, I wasn't sure if there was anything that was offered as we currently have it, and I don't know sort of how they've been, you know, dealing with it, all the stress and whatnot. I just wasn't sure if there was a need that arose. Is that sort of cushion built into any of this, or is that something that would
Right.
sort of be allocated after the fact?
Well, what we're doing now, we're doing what we can with the mental health. It's out there. Isolation, social isolation is huge. When we were shut down on March 13th and we didn't see anybody until I think it was June when we started to roll out the curbside pickups. And believe me, some of them are getting out. They really are, and they're doing their thing and they're meeting up with their friends. And across the street from the senior center is Veterans Memorial Park. And on the Thursday lunch, they'd pull up, they'd get their lunch, they'd park their car across the street, take out their lounge chairs, tables, and trash bags, and go sit over there socially distanced and stay there for the whole afternoon. So they get their social time. So we started spreading the word about that to you know, the other elders and stuff, and more started showing up. And they did that with the Friday drive-throughs. We were doing lemonade and ice cream. We're doing, well, it's too cold to sit out there now, but trying to do the best we can to keep them all together again. And with the Zoom, with the coffee shop Zoom, they can get together and talk to each other. I know Terry's mom does it. We're doing Zoom bingo. That's really interesting.
I don't believe you.
Anyways.
Yeah, and my mom is doing the book club too. So I know that basically,
Yeah, and there's a book club.
have been doing what you can to try to keep
Right,
people.
but we can't bring the Memory Cafe back in because we had a very active Memory Cafe. We would have one of the busiest ones in the state, up to 30 participants, where some would only get 2 or 3. We tried to do one outside, only 3 people showed up. So we've been in contact with them, and we're doing our first Zoom Memory Cafe next month. So we'll see how that goes.
Excellent.
With live entertainment. We have an Irish duo.
It sounds great. Are there any other questions for Sue? Sue, good luck. Hopefully you guys will be opening up sometime soon. I saw that we went from red to yellow. I feel, you know, that feels good. And the fact that the vaccines are coming out, that feels
We are
helpful.
going to do, in March, we're going to start again with the chair yoga again and movies. I'm going to keep bingo out until May because I want to be able to open up the windows and let everybody else enjoy the bingo game outside and what goes on. But yeah, we're going to start with the soft opening again and start trying to get them back in.
Excellent. All right. Sue, again, thank you very much for all of the information. and for everything that all your folks are doing over there. And I hope you have a good rest of
Thank you
the
for
night.
all the support. We really appreciate it. Will do. Thank you very much.
Okay,
You.
have a good one. And then that will bring us on to Muir is here. You're all set with your presentation? Okay, before you talk, you might want to unmute.
That would help, wouldn't it?
It does, yeah, I'm not a good lip reader. I'll work on it, but
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, let me share my screen. All right. Thank you guys for having me. It's good to be here. Just a little bit of an outline for you. Give you a quick look at the library. Go over a couple of statistics. Obviously, with COVID, not much worthy of comparison from FY21, but we'll talk a little bit about it, and we'll look at what happened in FY20, talk about some of the budget numbers, talk about how we use some of the outside funds that we have, talk about some goals for the future, and then go through our requests and some rationale there, some trends, and obviously if you guys have questions, I will do my best to answer them. So our mission statement, the Lunenburg Public Library is committed to fostering democratic principles by providing free and open access to information and community resources, and by supporting an environment of lifelong learning, community cohesiveness, and the growth of knowledge. We provide a window to the world well beyond Lunenburg for all ages and backgrounds by using current technologies, quality resources, and programs. Within that mission, we consider 3 areas to be our primary focus: create, collaborate, and communicate. Particularly in a time such as a pandemic, those are all important things. Creating is a no-brainer. You got to think outside the box and problem solve. Collaboration is always important. Allows us to strengthen our response to the community needs. Working with people like Sue, who just finished her presentation, making sure she's got books for her book group that she's just started, things like that. And communication, I mentioned last year, and it's true this year again, even more so, communicating about the resources we've got at the library or wherever is key to our success. If people don't know what we have to offer, they're not likely to use it. Often the assumption about libraries is we're just about the books. Certainly not true anymore. So communicating is key. I'll just go through a little bit current status and what we've been doing over the last few months with all the limitations. At the moment, we do have limited browsing appointments. We have staff in the building Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday. And each of those days, we offer 2 blocks of up to 10 people to browse the library materials in person. We also offer at all other times when there's staff in the building, curbside pickup appointments for people to pick up materials that they've reserved and requested. We're offering virtual programs with decent turnout. Really, last night we had a program about artists' gardens. Had 65 people show up on Zoom. Unfortunately, that's only 65% of the people that registered for the program, but 65 is great turnout for a Zoom program. It's a good time of year to think about gardens and to escape a little bit that way. We've been doing lots of take-home kits as well for all ages. When we started, so we started before FY21 kicked off with curbside pickups, and we're pretty slow to implement the browsing appointments. just because of all of the logistical challenges that the state guidelines gave us. For instance, quarantining materials has been a huge logistical challenge for us, but that's what libraries are all about. And from the beginning, we've been the requirements have suggested to us that we quarantine materials when they're returned. And when we reopened for browsing, even when patrons handle materials, we are supposed to quarantine them. So one of the things that we did from the get-go is once we started accepting materials back last spring, we set up in our largest area that was open, our community room, to be our quarantine zone. And so we've got tables set up in there so that we can put the returned items into quarantine until it's time for us to check things in. So we've got a good system there, but obviously that creates some backlog on time commitments and waiting for things to check back in. So that's been interesting. Since we last spoke, we've also lost, two of our employees have moved on to other jobs. Our digital services librarian moved on to the school department. It's helping with the IT there. And our teen librarian also moved on. So we still have one vacancy, the digital services librarian, but we have hired since then a new teen librarian, obviously, to leave such an important part of our community demographic without specialized staff person at the library is a major hole. So I'm really happy that we were able to do that this year. Susan has stepped into her new position and really jump-started our teen services. Again, we had a strong foundation there. It had a few months where the position was open, and since she's been there, it's been great to see what she's been doing. Take-home kits for crafts, offering some various virtual programs, doing some experimentation, and seeing how she can engage our teens in town. She's done a great job. Currently working on birdseed take-home ornaments kits for people to feed their birds in their yard. So nice little STEM connection there. We also, in the fall, while the weather was still cooperative, we were able to restart some of our children's programming in person out on our patio, which is a great programming space. So Miss Debbie, a perennial favorite in town, did her story times out there. Alfresco story times is what she labeled them, and it was fantastic. Great to see, actually really wonderful turnout Monday mornings out there. It was generally between 20 and 30 people, sometimes more than that. Almost a dozen families some days coming for stories, songs, crafts. She did take-home craft kits with that as well. So really, really fun to see that at a time when we were all feeling pretty challenged. Obviously, the weather is not cooperating there anymore, but we're still doing virtual story times, lots of other virtual programs. I mentioned the gardening program. We had a home downsizing program in January that had a good turnout, 35 people on Zoom for that. And then a creepy Christmas program the month before that as well that had similar numbers. Since September, when we started our browsing appointments, we've had almost 1,000 people come in for browsing, which is nowhere near our normal visit numbers, but pretty good turnout considering everything that's happening. Glad to see people feeling comfortable enough to come check out library books. And some statistics for you. Sorry, formatting. I think I created this spreadsheet, PowerPoint on another computer, and I think the font was a little too rare. So apologies for that. Luckily, the statistics themselves are not obscured. So between FY19 and FY20, FY20 concluded with our March, April, May, and June of pandemic. So looking at the period July to February, which has a relevant comparison, FY20 saw an increase of 3.5% as far as people visiting the library, which is within the fluctuation that we've seen in recent years. Overall, a 4% change up and down is from my perspective pretty steady. So just looking at actual numbers, FY19 July to February, 42,000 people, 212, compared to 43,698 for FY20. So I'm going to skip the program numbers and look at circulations, because similarly, looking at a similar period, July to February, FY19 numbers increased by 14% during FY20. So circulation saw a huge increase for that period before the pandemic actually kicked in and the library was closed for a period. So 54,987 items, physical items circulated in FY20, July to February, versus 47,418 the year before. As a comparison, at this point this year, when we've had curbside pickup and a very limited number of browsing appointments, our circulation numbers right now are about 24,000 physical items. And I'm saying physical because there's also the e-circulation, so the electronic materials, which is a completely different story, as you might expect. And so the value of those physical materials, another interesting comparison, for that same period, so limiting and ignoring the pandemic times when we weren't even open for part of it. The value of the physical material circulated at the LPL for FY20 was $751,533, compared to the July to February period in FY19, which was $663,887. So similar jump in values, around 14-15% increase for FY20, and obviously huge dip this year. Looking at electronic circulations, I think is really interesting. We are looking hopefully at what is the light at the end of the tunnel as far as COVID's impact and the limitations surrounding it with vaccines rolling out. But this is actually a behavior that I would expect to continue beyond that time. The increase in electronic circulations, if people are having a positive experience using our electronic materials, I would expect this increase to maybe not exactly the same rate in the future, but an increase over past usage of these materials, I think, is to be expected. But our e-circulations, so ebooks and e-audiobooks, in FY19, we circulated 11,343 of those items. In FY20, that increased by 29% to 14,677. And that increase happened entirely during those pandemic months, so March, April, May, and June. So the usage during those 4 months was actually 150% higher than those months in the preceding year. Obviously, I think that's what you would expect. People are stuck at home; they're going to be trying to use all sorts of electronic virtual connections to use resources. Those usage numbers have continued into FY20 for obvious reasons. Summer reading was a quiet year we saw about 25% of what we normally see during our summer reading programs, which were all virtual. The Friends of the Library purchased an electronic resource called Beanstack, which it enables us to create reading challenges that can be virtually tracked. So readers of all ages can create an account through that site and then track the amount of reading that they do, which is what we do for normal summer reading. This way, it was virtual, so it's a little easier to engage and access than keeping paper logs. So it's something moving into the future that we'll certainly continue to use, but also adds in things like virtual badges. So exciting for kids to, instead of earning their beaded necklace and beads for their necklace based on the number of pages or chapters or minutes that they read, they earned virtual badges this summer. So about 100 readers participated in our summer reading program this year, and the last couple of years it's been almost 400, which was a huge increase over summer reading programs before FY18. And another really important statistic I think to look at, wireless sessions for the library, particularly when we're considering the impact of COVID. When the library's doors were closed, we still saw some days dozens of cars in the parking lot at any time using our wireless. So our FY20 wireless sessions saw a huge jump. It is an estimated number, but we do have better metrics on that than we have in the past, because we at the beginning of FY20 upgraded our wireless access points. So this is a closer number to the actual than estimates in the past, but 17,000 wireless sessions. So really highly used resource. And as I mentioned, during the pandemic, we see people in the parking lot using the Wi-Fi even more than we did in the past during times when the library is closed. Looking at budget numbers, FY20 municipal library budget was $433,197. That was an increase of $16,920 over FY20, a 3.4% increase. This year, I did remember to include the benefits number from the payroll department. So combined between the DPW and the benefits, $32,507 plus $81,392 from other departments funding the library. And we also, for FY21, a pretty big decrease in outside funding. Mainly that's because of the Friends of the Lunenburg Library and the membership dip that we've seen. People have a little less money to pay for a membership to the Friends of the Library. So their membership numbers are a little lower than they sometimes are. And so we've been a little conservative with what we've used from their funding, not knowing how long things would last and not knowing what the financial impact would be long term. But still a respectable $37,000 approximately dollars from outside sources. So that includes state aid money, which is about $17,000. The Friends money, both from their endowment and from their operating budget, which goes to things like programming, paying for some supplies, paying for all of the printing and copying that happens at the library. State aid is used partially for CW Mars, our library network membership, but also for things like technology and any other really pressing needs. We can use that funding for that. We also have a capital item plan for the library, our carpet replacement project that is funded in the amount of $126,000. Currently working on request for proposals. So our FY21 anticipated total operating costs $710,096. there is a requirement by the state library. It's called the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners, so the state organization that kind of governs libraries. There's a requirement for appropriation amount based on, similar to the 2.5% increase for schools that that's required there. The previous 3 years appropriations averaged increased by 2.5%. And that requirement for FY22 is 428,256. Our request for the FY22 budget is $441,307. That's a 1% increase. And the FY22 town manager preliminary budget amount, 439,551, is also just over 1% increase from FY21. So I talked a little bit about some of these uses for outside funds already. As I mentioned, the Friends are really important for the library's operation. In years past, they've provided lots of funding for building maintenance. They provide huge amounts of funding for our programming. That's been one of the biggest cuts this year at a time when we weren't seeing a lot of people attending our programs early. We kind of cut back and we're pretty conservative. They also contribute endowment, money from their endowment, which is money that's left over from when the current building was built. And those endowment funds this year are going towards some security camera upgrades. So we've got a few cameras in the building, and 3 of them are still very low res. And those will be upgraded, and we're going to be adding in a couple additional cameras so we have more complete coverage outside the building. Just in case, you never know. I mentioned printing and copying, one of those really convenient services for residents can be found at the library. All of that is made possible by the Friends. They own the copy machine that's down there. They pay for all the toner, all the paper that's used, and because of that, when the public comes in and uses printing and copying, they do ask for a 10-cent a page donation, basically, to the Friends to help make that service available. State aid, as I mentioned, we do have a revolving fund. Our revolving fund is often library fines, and almost exclusively library fines. And we've seen a huge drop off in recent years in the amount of revenue generated by library fines. The trustees at the end of FY20 also decided to move in the direction of becoming fine-free. Fines often disproportionately affect those least able to pay them. And so we're thinking of children here, those without huge amounts of money to work with as well. Those people that really we want most to be able to access the library are often disproportionately affected by library fines. You know, a kid whose parents can't get them to the library in time to return the book, for them, 10 cents a day can often add up pretty quickly. And you don't want to be forcing them to use their allowance to reactivate their account. So one of the things that we've been trying, and it's really just been during the pandemic, so we can't really effectively evaluate how it's going, but the children's materials, most of them, so children's books, children's audiobooks, the materials don't accumulate fines. So if a parent takes out a book, if a child takes out a book from the children's collection and it is returned late, it doesn't actually accumulate those fine charges. And so that, if they can get the book back, will free them up to continue to borrow items. And, you know, anecdotally, it's been appreciated. There's been, you know, a large portion of time when the whole logistics of returning books to the libraries has kind of led to much less stringent sticking to library fines. When we have to quarantine items 3 extra days, it becomes kind of a gray area where if a fine accumulated, it's tough to make sure. It's tough to hold someone accountable if the materials were back on time. So that's been an interesting side challenge to quarantining things. But outside funding, I digressed a little, I apologize. Revolving fund is often made up of fines, and the recent trend has been downward in the amounts generated for revenue there. But what we use that funding for when we have it is often library materials. So we pay periodicals oftentimes with revolving funds, with our revolving fund, sorry. So like the Boston Globe and the Wall Street Journal and the Ledger and Sentinel and Enterprise, and depending on how much there is, sometimes a magazine or two. I think the next slide is also more outside funds. It is. Worth noting again, Hannaford donated $3,500 for a project in our children's room. They were very generous. And so this grows out of our ongoing 5th grade visits program, where we invite all of the students in the 5th grade to regularly visit the library under normal circumstances when they're not learning remotely, regularly, to learn how to use the library, get a taste of passion for reading, etc. And so what we saw was a need for a space in the library for that age group that's similar to our teen room, which is a separate space where teens can, for the teen room at least, is a separate space that teens can feel comfortable either using library resources or just spending time doing homework in the space, hanging out in the space, whatever they need to do. Chromeboxes in there and computers. A need for what some people call tweens, so that 5th grade, 6th grade, sometimes 4th grade age group, to have a comfortable, safe, welcoming space. And we don't have a separate room for that, but in our children's room, the way it's laid out, there are really 2 halves of the room, and the books for the youngest readers are on one side, and that older age group has many of their books are on the other side. And so what we did was, with this money, was take out one of the shelving units and replace it with a half-height shelving unit, and it creates display space. So and on this slide you can see it's a similar half-height bookshelf here. I don't have a good picture of that children's room, but creates display space on top. It also opens up the room, and so it, with some additional comfy seating and some tables, creates a kind of a cozy, almost pseudo room down in that space. And so Hannaford was really generous, and helped us create something really beneficial. We haven't seen huge numbers of people taking advantage of it because of the limitations during the pandemic, but we are really looking forward to the 5th graders returning and being able to capitalize on that space. And the last kind of category of our outside funds are gifts. Every year, people give money to the library. Sometimes it's there are some donors' intentions that come with that money, so we buy a book. But other times it's kind of freely given to be used as we see fit. And so there's that. We use that funding for whatever needs we evaluate as important. So looking towards the future, talk a little bit about some of our goals. those three pillars that I mentioned at the beginning are the pillars of what we do, the foundation on which we're built, collaborating, communicating, and creating. And still, communicating about our resources is our biggest opportunity. So with that in mind, one of our big projects this year, we were lucky enough to have some funding to hire an outside consultant to work on our long-range strategic plan, our first at the Lunenburg Public Library in at least 10 years. It's an important document. I'm sure you guys are familiar with long-range planning. It kind of documents what we're currently doing and guides us as we move into the future. We expect the possibility of having some surprising information come up as we're going through it. But this spring, we are looking forward to hopefully voting on a strategic plan at our June trustee meeting. That's an important thing that's happening. Programs too. So whether it's virtual programming as the current format, or when we return to more normal times when we can do things in person, programming is a core service, and it's an important way that the library engages with our community. So it's a response to needs, but it is also a way of usually it's an important way of generating excitement about what's happening at the library is about programming. Let's see. So I'll move into budget requests here. I'm just going to take a quick drink of water. Excuse me. Thank you. Yeah, so budget requests. We've got a couple key ones up on the slides, but materials. Our materials line is always one of our most important uses of funding. The expectation that libraries are about books is no longer necessarily accurate, but that we are about resources and informational materials is definitely true. The MBLC, as part of their requirements for municipal appropriation, does require that 16% of our total appropriation be used for library materials. And so that kind of governs how much we ask for when it comes to library materials. In FY19, we spent $89,902 on library materials. So that was about about $23,000 more than appropriated amounts. And so some of that funding came from other areas of the budget where we underspent. Some of it came from other sources, and that does not include, it does include money that the Friends paid for library materials, which does not qualify for that MBLC requirement for appropriated money. But it is, I include that information because it gives you an idea of how much we actually spend on materials. And so increased spending on library materials does factor into statistics like circulation. And so that for that July to February period in FY20 where we saw a 14% increase, a lot of that has to do with increased spending on library materials. It's not a one-to-one correlation, certainly, and it's not a case where just because you spend more money, you see higher increases. There is some influence on the role of selectors in that. So some of our staff have the responsibility of selecting what material we buy. And so those choices also factors into the success of that. But so we are basically asking for, because we have two lines that really two budget lines that, take a breath, let me pull it back together. Two of our budget lines often are what would qualify as spending for library materials. So the book service line, if you're looking at our item line by line budget, book service is used to basically rent really popular book titles for a short period of time to provide a second copy for materials that's going to be in high demand. And so that line is jumping around here. So give me while I flip my page over. Request for 4,500. It's been several years since the amount of that contract has increased, and so it did not increase in FY20. It did not increase in FY19, and I do anticipate it to increase in the, if not this year, next year. I don't have the exact numbers. The exact cost of it will not come out until the invoice is created, so I'll know that in late spring. But I am requesting an increase there. Library materials line is the other budget line that is where we use money for these materials. And again, requesting an increase there. The total between these two does need to meet 16% of the 16% of the total appropriated funds for the library. And so part of my rationale there is that we poured huge amounts of FY20 funding into electronic materials. And if you've ever tried to access electronic materials through the library, you'll know one of the biggest bottlenecks and headaches for users is when you want to read something and it's not available. And so a lot of that comes from the proportionally minuscule amounts of funding that's spent on electronic materials by the library. So there are several reasons for that. One would be the high cost per use of those materials. So it costs the library upwards of $60, $70, $80, sometimes more than that, to buy an ebook for one user to use at a time, or e-audiobook, similar prices, where it might cost you, if you're using Audible or even just buying a Kindle book, single digits sometimes per title. So it's a huge difference between what we have to pay for materials, for electronic materials, from what the consumer has to pay. Physical items is a different story, but the increase in usage that we've seen for electronic materials that I mentioned earlier, I think is a reasonable expectation that an increase in usage can be expected in the future. I do want to be able to spend a little more money proportionally on these electronic materials. So we pay a little bit from our library materials budget line for ebooks and e-audiobooks. We also pay for a shared collection through our library network through our membership fee, which is my next budget request rationale item here to talk about. As I mentioned last year, and we were anticipating for the future, Lunenburg's population growth has kicked us into a different membership bracket in CW Mars, which is our library network. We've been over 10,000 in population for several years, and we've kind of been in this holding pattern with CW Mars where they haven't they haven't pushed us into the full membership category, but we are high enough in population now and it's been long enough that they have decided to proceed. And we were what they used to call a mini net member, and we're paying about $2,400 for as a membership fee. And the full membership fee, and we're now going to be a full member, the full membership fee is $8,000. So there's an increase there. Luckily, they are allowing us a period of transition over 3 years to slowly increase that membership cost. So there's a little bit of an increase this year, and next year we'll see another increase. So I am requesting an increase in that CWMARS network budget line, so that we can pay additional amounts there. Typically, that budget line has only covered part of that membership cost anyways. So on top of a membership fee, there are some usage-based fees that come with the CWMARS administering our ebooks and our shared catalog system. There's also, we have a fiber line for our staff computers, and at the beginning of FY20, we actually switched over as many as our computers as we could to that fiber line because it is dependable. We have had 0 losses except when the power was out of internet connection on that line since we've switched over. And before that, on our Comcast line, we would have pretty regular interruptions on our public access computers. So that's another portion of that membership assessment. That's the annual fee that this line pays for. The rest of that membership assessment we pay for out of state aid. But because that total amount is increasing, I am requesting additional funding in that budget line. One of the really key pieces of funding from our appropriation for FY21 has been for programming. This has been the first year that we've had any municipal funding for programming. And it was actually perfectly timed. When the Friends were less able to pay for our programming, we have this source of funding to fall back on, and we have used it especially for STEM programming, which I mentioned. So this science, technology, engineering, math, which is so important in the education of our young people, and is outside of our children's librarians' expertise. We've been able to use this funding to provide some STEM programming that's been really popular. We recently expanded the number of people who can participate each month by providing additional kits. So the way that this works, there's a take-home kit where they get some supplies to build whatever the project is for the month. And then they also get a Zoom program with this instructor who's been fantastic. Has a company called Renaissance Kids. He's pretty local, not Lunenburg, but local to the area. And they can ask questions and build together on Zoom and figure some fun stuff out. And so that program funding is really important moving forward. Did not request an increase, but it is very important to note how important it's been for us. Also want to make sure staffing, we have a vacancy, and so our staff has been working extra hard to cover that vacancy. Often, the position that's open is the digital services librarian position. So it's the person that often provides one-on-one instruction for people when it comes to technology. They help guide the technology aspects of development at the library, troubleshoots computers, does software updates and other kind of IT related functions when Dan from the IT department can't make it, or so lots of important things on which everything we do is based is done by this person. And so it's really important to have funding to hire someone for that position. moving forward, even though it's currently vacant. Let's see. So I've got a digital trend slide here. Before I go back to additional requests, library materials, I'll just go back for a second. And so we pumped a bunch of extra funding in FY20 into our ebook and e-audiobook collections. And so my little bar chart here gives you a little comparison about the collection size that is available at the end of these fiscal years. So 2020 being the one on the left here, more than 130,000 items available in the collection at the end of this year. And so a lot of that purchasing was done in that final quarter of FY20. As a comparison, we had a little over 80,000 items available at the end of FY19. So it's a huge jump, correspondingly more expensive to have purchased that. And again, what it resulted in was the ability for our patrons and residents in Lunenburg to use these resources at a much higher rate than they would have otherwise. The total electronic circulation was 130% that of FY19 this past year. So, and then just the specific numbers of items in the chart on the left. Another increase that we requested was office supplies, and so we've talked a little bit about what the Friends purchase each year. And a big chunk of that is supplies. They pay for paper, toner, copying supplies. So there's I did request a little bit more than this past year for office supplies. Our spending annually, when you fund it, include outside funding, is perennially higher than the appropriated amount. Often it's twice the appropriated amount, and so just a little higher amount requested there. Energy, I did request an increase there. The town manager does not include it in her preliminary budget. Some of that, so projections are difficult to do with energy. Some of it is based on weather, but our HVAC system is also aging. FY20 and into FY21 as well, we saw a handful of major repairs that needed to happen, and for a period in FY21, the heating system was not functioning properly and not heating the building to even a comfortable level, and so the first few months of the year, our spending on gas was significantly lower than usual. And since the repairs have been made, our run rate has actually been a little higher than the preceding year at a consistent rate. So projecting that we will expend our amounts for FY21 did request a slightly higher amount in FY22. Obviously, electricity and heating are needed to run a building. And when you factor in that we are limited in our operations this year, being closed for certain amounts of time, enables us to leave the lights off a little longer than we would otherwise. Projecting that we'll expend those full amounts, I think it would be wise to increase for the future, but let's see. Also, most of our other funding lines are requested to be flat funding. So things like mileage, we're not going to end up using our small amount of mileage funding this year. Our training has been professional development, network participation, other things that we use mileage for. We've been able to participate virtually. I do think in the future some of that virtual participation will continue, but there will also be other other needs for mileage in the future. So continuing to fund that is requested. Mentioned office supplies. And it is, so things like participating in CW Mars, there is a requirement to participate in what's called Users Council. So a representative from the library does need to attend their quarterly meetings to help govern the network. So that's one of the ways we use mileage regularly. Let's see what we got next. That's just a repeat. Apologies. Time for questions. I'm sure there are several. Thank you, guys.
I know, Peter, you had your hand up earlier. I'm assuming your question was answered. Actually, Muir, if you could, Peter, you're muted, and Muir, if you could just unshare your screen, that would be awesome.
Certainly will.
Thanks, Terry. I have a number of questions, but I raised my hand during the presentation because there was a specific question around the materials that he wound up answering over the course of the conversation. So, but it was.
So does that mean I should pass on you?
No, I still have other questions.
Yeah, of course.
Good.
But I can wait if you want to call on somebody else and come back to me.
Oh, go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Thank you. That was a very thorough presentation, and in particular, I want to thank you for covering the off-budget spending, and that's obviously an area that we have some particular interest in. With respect to your overall budget, it's showing a 1% overall increase, which you've enumerated the reasons for the individual line increases. But you have a $304 salary line decrease from the previous year. Is that a result of turnover or fewer hours that you anticipate that you're going to need, or what's going on there with respect to your overall staff funding?
Yeah, so thank you, Peter. That's a great question. I did mention some staff turnover. So we had, going into FY21, we had 2 vacancies. We did hire a teen librarian. And so the way that those pay rates work, she started at step 1.
Yep.
And so
Okay.
basically that's saving us a little money there. Step 1 versus step 5 or whatever her predecessor was at. And so that preliminary budget and that budget request reflects a similar thing for the digital services librarian, expecting that person to come in probably at a lower rate than the predecessor. So that's the difference.
Understood. Thank you.
There are other increases, right, for the other staff people. And so those 2 decreases nicely balances us out.
Got it. You had mentioned a couple of lines that you think will be underspent as a result of COVID-19, like mileage and that sort of thing. Are there any other lines that you expect will be underspent as a result of the pandemic and your closure and that kind of thing?
I think the staff salary line may end up being underspent because of the vacancies.
Mhm.
There has been some taking it for the team and working additional hours for a few people who are on staff. But I think that spending will end up coming out a little low. The mileage, I don't think we'll use it on mileage. But I don't think that there will be areas. We often kind of play conservatively through the year and then spend on, like, technology is a great example. We've got a couple places where we take some funding for technology when it's necessary. One of those places is the office supplies line, sometimes depending on what happens in a year. But often those expenses come at the end of the fiscal year. And so I don't anticipate any other lines to be really underspent. No.
Okay. One other question, you had mentioned that you're noticing people using Wi-Fi in the parking lot, and that raised some concern because we're seeing a lot in the media about, kids doing online schooling in McDonald's parking lots and that sort of thing. Do you have any sense that there are some acute community needs or individual needs that we should be addressing as a result of the pandemic that, is what I guess what I'm getting at is this indicative of anything that we should be aware of?
I really appreciate the question. I wish I had concrete data to support it, but I don't. But I do think, what in the library world, I don't know if it's the same jargon used in other environments, but the digital divide, I think is present in any community, and so there are people who don't have access at home or at a comfortable place other than the library, don't have access to things that they need, like the internet.
Mhm.
And so, I think I would assume there has to be a contingent who have that need even in Lunenburg, where I think we feel pretty comfortable. We care about each other, and we do a good job of taking care of our neighbors. But I'm sure that there's a need there. I don't have the data to support it. We don't monitor the Wi-Fi in any way that would enable me to say, yes, there are students doing classes in the parking lot because they can at home. Teens definitely, even when we're not doing browsing in the library, are definitely using Wi-Fi, even right now. And so there's usage there. And I would think there's, whether it's something that we could offer like hotspots to borrow at the library, or other technological devices that might help address some of those needs. I'm sure there are things we could do at the library. One of the big questions for me would be, would we give up something else
Right.
that's currently funded in order to do that? That would be a tough decision to make. I don't think I would go in that direction. If there was other funding, maybe we could. And so the one thing I forgot to mention, while I have the opportunity because of this great question, the strategic plan makes us eligible for additional funding in the future, grant funding from the state and federal sources. If you have a 5-year plan that you're updating, it makes you eligible for some grant opportunities for things like technology. That that would be a great use for one of those grants, and certainly is on my radar for something that I would like to do once we have the strategic plan, to write a grant application for something like that.
My last comment / question, I noticed that you've got folks representing the library trustees and Friends of the Library in the audience tonight, which I think is great to have them come and participate and support your presentation. If a member of the community were interested in joining the Friends of the Library and or making a donation, how would they go about doing that?
Thank you for asking. And yes, we had our monthly trustee meeting tonight, wrapped it up a little early so we could all come. So if you want to join the Friends on lunenburglibrary.org, the library website, which the Friends pay for, there is a Friends page. And on that page, there's an application people can print off, mail it in with their membership fee. Similarly, if they just want to make a donation, same format. You can print off. It's actually the same form. Print it off, fill it out, and send it in. You can come by the library, give us a call if you want to do a curbside pickup, or if sign up for a browsing appointment, and we have actual physical envelopes you could pick up as well. Same purpose. Thank you for
All right.
that up.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Terry.
Dave?
Yep, thank you. Muir, again, I agree, great presentation. You guys have a real challenge because your demographic is every person in this town and many people from surrounding towns. And it sounds like you guys are doing a great job and the best you can with the resources that you have. With that said, I'd like to look at a couple of line items that not really jumped out at me, but gave me a couple of questions or comments. The first one is the contracted services. I see in the recommended or in the target budget, that entire $5,000 was removed. And then subsequently down the road, the request at 2,500 and in the proposed budget 2,500. I'm a little concerned because in other departments, contracted services can include, and correct me if I'm wrong, cleaning services and things that may be related to your full opening as you get further into this process of reopening the library. Could you speak to that? And that's the concern I have. Is there going to be money from some other source to take care of that if that is what's being cut there?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So you don't have on, I would assume in front of you, FY20 or FY19 funding
No, I don't.
on that line, and typically that line is funded at around $2,000, and under some circumstances that might be used for cleaning projects. It's been used in the past for some small painting projects. This year, FY21, the $5,000 will be used for our consultant for the strategic plan. And so there's there's a one-time component to that $5,000, and I think that because of that, we see in the target budget that amount removed. And based on our conversation, my conversation with the town manager, I shouldn't speak for her, but when we talked about it, and based on her preliminary budget, adding some funding back in for that is important. And so that 2,500 is actually more than FY19, but less than FY21. And I, off the top of my head, I'm blanking on whether it's the same or more than FY20. But yeah, as you refer to, I think additional cleaning might be expected. Certainly, using our community room for quarantine area, I think that there likely will be some logistical challenges that need to be met there as we reopen. But $2,500 is something that I for that purpose, I think is something that makes me feel comfortable. It's for us at the library, the regular cleaning is part of part of the DPW.
Okay. I was going to make that comment then, and
Yeah.
that makes sense because that comes under facilities.
Yeah, exactly. But one-time usage, for contracted things like that security camera. If the Friends security camera upgrades, if the Friends were not able to fund that, that would be something that this line might be used for. So yeah, I think that's an important thing to discuss, certainly.
Yeah, no, that explains the gyration of the numbers, and that's one of the things that a couple of us on this committee look at. And you were right. If we had had the historical data from a couple of years previous, we probably wouldn't have been as concerned once you told us that there was one specific reason for that being that high in 1 year.
I was going to say, Dave, I've been around long enough to have known exactly what that was.
Okay.
I should have let you answer that, Terry.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll ask Terry next year.
There you go. No, next year Terry will be gone.
No, that's why I said that. Hint, hint. My other line item is electricity charges. Two questions. First of all, are there any Green Communities projects in the pipeline for the library? And then the second one is more a comment than a question, and that is that I think I understand that as we move into the streetlight project and move forward into purchasing and ultimately switching over, hopefully, to LEDs, that there is going to be some solar credits that will be needed to be shifted from, I believe, the streetlights to somewhere else in the facilities of the town. And just giving you a heads up, if I am correct with that, the library might want to put some dibs in on some of that to offset your electric costs. The more important one short term would be the green communities projects.
Yeah, I think the main, what we discussed with that was replacing the staff break rooms, fridge, and range with more efficient hardware there. And I don't think we had much else that qualified for what they were working on last.
Okay. Lighting in that building, has that been changed in the last couple of years, or is that a problem that it doesn't qualify for anything?
think
Yes,
that
it
was-
has been changed, and yes, it is a little bit of a problem.
Okay.
So the LEDs, we switched over to LEDs before I started in Lunenburg, and there's some issues with some of the LEDs. Some of them, have already failed, and Kit has been great about kind of periodically going through and replacing some of them. Some of them are the wrong brightness levels. My office would be a great example. It's a little too bright with the bulbs that were put in there, and so the main hall is another example where the uplights. There are 3 types of lights in the main hall of the library. The uplights, what was installed was incorrect, and so they were not functioning properly. And Kit's replaced those with the right lumens, or whatever the right term is, so that it's actually the right brightness in there when those lights are on. So we've been kind of addressing it piecemeal, but it was a big project that happened, might be 5 years ago now.
I believe that was a Green Communities Task Force. That was one of their first projects, was to change over to the LED lights.
Great. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, Chris?
On the carpet installation, is there a date for when that's occurring? Would it occur, I guess, during times when we're kind of restricted in use anyways?
Don't have a date yet. I am hopeful that it will be while we are still in the restrict. Yeah, I'm hoping that we'll move forward as quickly as possible with that, and get it done. It's gonna be pretty intensive. Part of the funding there, and part of the reason it's so high is to move the books. Whether we replace all of the carpet under the bookshelves or not, the dust and other debris that gets kicked up is a serious threat to the collections. The materials that are in the library are surprisingly valuable when you look at the insurance costs for town facilities. We're actually, the library is up there because of all those materials. So we got to move those, and to move an entire library's worth of materials, you got to be pretty organized and experienced doing that. So that's a big part of that amount, but we don't have a date is the answer to your question.
Okay.
It would be really good to get that done before we're in a more normal mode of operation, for sure.
All right. And then, so the security cameras, do those get piped to the police station, or are they internal?
They are internal. There is a means of accessing them remotely, port forwarding or whatever the IT term is. I don't know that the police department has direct access to it. I'm pretty sure that they don't. I know that some municipalities have it set up that way, but I don't think there's access to the police department.
And are there other security cameras around town would this be kind of the same infrastructure, if so?
I don't know. Any access from outside the building to that system could be done with an internet connection. You got to have the right credentials, the right software, but like I can access it from my phone when I need to. If the burglary alarm goes off, I can see, is it the courier service dropping off books? Forgot the code. Is it the cleaning crew on a Friday afternoon forgot to turn off the alarm, and say cancel the alarm or whatever. I don't know that the police department would can't speak for them, but to monitor it on that level, I think is probably more appropriate for me and my responsibility. But
Okay. And then you mentioned some IT costs. Do you use the same IT as the rest of the municipal? And I guess the question to me is why do we have IT kind of segregated from school IT, town IT, library IT, I don't know, conservation IT, whatever it is? Seems like if we bundled that, there'd be kind of savings to be had.
Just trying to wrap my head around the best way to answer it before I go. So staffing wise, we have our IT department for the town, and that's segregated. There's a school component, a school department component, and there's a town side component. So we have one person that we share across the other town departments, library, finance, whoever else. And so Dan's great. And similar to Kit, he gets stretched between all these different departments though. So having someone on staff who can perform some of those kind of lower level tasks, software updates, for instance, is really beneficial. So there's that component to the question. There's also the infrastructure side of things. For the library, we've got our ILS, which is our catalog, the way we keep track of all the items, all the people that use the library and what they've got checked out, circulation. And that needs to run in an integrated way with the rest of CW Mars. And so our Comcast connection wouldn't do that. And I don't know that the town side infrastructure would be able to handle that connection either. So the CW Mars has that fiber line that connects to the building, and so that fiber line is so dependable that we switched over all those other devices to that connection instead of dealing with service interruptions for our public access computers, for instance. So there's that as well. I'm not sure how well that answers your question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so let me
follow up.
Yeah, on a follow-up on the fiber line, can that only be used for CW Mars connection?
No, we have.
Meaning, could other municipal groups use that?
It could only be the library. It couldn't be other departments. The same company that provides that service might be available to provide other connections. I don't. Not enough of an expert in that to be able to answer that comfortably.
Okay.
It's a great connection. I mean, it's fast, it's dependable, it's never let us down, and knock on wood. Of course, as soon as I say that, tomorrow we'll have a problem. But
just to clarify, that's part of the CW Mars subscription, though. Part of that relationship is that we get the broadband service that goes with it, right? They're not two different things.
Yeah, it's wrapped up in what's our annual membership assessment. And so CW Mars is an organization. They own, for instance, servers on which the whole cloud-based ILS is run. Excuse me. And so the connection to those servers needs to be dependable and fast in order for our front desk, our frontline service to work properly, for us to be able to check out books. We can't have interruptions in service. You can't check out books if you're not connected to that. I mean, we have an offline mode, but it doesn't. You don't want. I can get into the quagmire of explaining the things that can happen when you're not connected, but it is part
of
the
hotspots that are set up. You talked about potentially even additional hotspots. Would that be on that same CW Mars line?
So yeah, what I was referring to there would be cellular hotspots, which are separate devices. Like it kind of it connects to a cell network, like your phone, and you can set it up. It sets up so that like a wireless access point that's connected to an Ethernet connection to the fiber line in the library. It would provide a connection over cell lines to the internet. And so someone could borrow that, put it in their house, connect their their laptop or a borrowed Chromebook to that hotspot. And even if they don't have a phone line or a broadband line or a cable line into their house for internet, the cell connection of that hotspot would provide them internet. So they could do if it's a student, they could participate in virtual classes.
So you're talking a 4G or LTE or type?
Yeah, just like you would get from whatever cell company. That was what I was talking about there, so that it wouldn't be someone who needed to be at the library to be accessing the internet. Like they wouldn't have to be parked in the parking lot accessing our Wi-Fi. They wouldn't have to come into the building to our public access computer. They could be at their home, in a more maybe easily accessed environment where their parents not there to drive them to the library, for instance. They could still do their class.
But to be clear, that's speculation in terms of something we could do in the future.
Correct.
Our hotspot today at the library that is essentially public access, those are Wi-Fi access points that we own today that are connected to the network that is part of the CW Mars subscription.
Yes. So that, and I wouldn't use hotspot to describe what we have at the library. It's it's a wireless access point.
But it's available to the public.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
The common nomenclature for a network that's available to the public, like you would have at Starbucks, is a hotspot.
Got it. Fair enough.
Okay.
Yep.
Chris, you set?
I guess one final question would be with COVID and with media, I'm assuming, like TV and in movies are kind of going down. What's the trend with books? Are we seeing like more people sitting down at their computer writing books to have their outlet versus movies? Or is there any kind of trends that are forming in that space?
I think it's pretty difficult to evaluate the physical items available at the library because people have been operating under this, don't go anywhere mentality almost, or many people have. But the electronic materials at the library and the huge jump there, I think does suggest that they are, during this time, much more likely to be looking for something to read.
I guess I'm looking from the supply side of it. Like, do you anticipate that, come the summer, come the fall, all of a sudden there's going to be like a lot of new titles out there book wise? And have you accounted for that properly? And, where there's probably a demand side of that too, with patrons wanting to borrow books.
We've been pretty steady in our book purchasing, physical books and other physical items. Not an increase over past, certainly, but we've been trying to cover those mainstay titles that we know people will be looking for at some point if they're not looking right now. And what we found is people are definitely looking for books. It's just not as many people coming out as under normal circumstances.
For sure.
24,000. I was surprised when I looked and saw the circulation for physical items at 24,000. I thought it was going to be much lower. That's we're 2/3 of the way through the year, and that's like maybe a third of what we normally do. So that's I was expecting it to be lower than that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Evan?
Thank you. That was a great presentation. It was really thorough. I just have a couple questions. The first one is with the shutdown that happened last summer and whatnot, was there obviously you still have to have electricity to the building, you still have to have air conditioning to the building, but was there an offset that was seen, or I guess a reduction in cost that can be kind of worked into the expected increases that you're going to see, you're planning for next year? Or was that did your, I guess, your monthly bills kind of for electrical and for gas and whatnot kind of just stay where they were?
They were surprisingly close to what they normally are. Yeah, I would have. That's part of the rationale behind a requested increase of a little bit, a small increase. There was that period for the gas in particular. I think it was July through early September, where the HVAC was really not heating at all, and so the costs were really low. That wasn't because the building wasn't occupied. We were there and working. It was just uncomfortable in the building, and so that is offset because afterwards, after the repairs were done and is back functioning more the way we would expect, the costs are higher than they were for the same period the year before. So what I'm concerned with is the HVAC system running at a rate that's maybe running less efficiently perhaps than it has before these repairs were made. Again, that's not my expertise as far as what's happening with the boiler and the heating system, but to see the costs consistently higher, I'm a little concerned that's going to continue.
Okay, all right. To kind of segue off of that specifically, I took a quick look back through the capital purchase requests and the ones that Heather passed on and the ones that were not approved from the committee. I don't remember seeing an HVAC upgrade on either one of those. Is that something that you're planning to put in for a capital request, or?
Yeah, the HVAC system is kind of at the end of its expected lifespan, and so it's on the radar of what we'd like to have happen at some point. And typically for the capital plan, I discuss with Kit Walker, our DPW. He's the facilities manager, I think, facilities director, perhaps. And then he takes the library requests to the DPW department head, and then kind of that whole process before it gets into committee discussions. There's a little bit of prioritizing, hierarchizing of all of that, and so there's no dire need to replace those HVAC, and that would be a huge project. It'd be a huge capital project, but it's on our radar as something that might have to happen. We've discussed it, so it's definitely, there's an awareness, and I think the last time we discussed it was before these repairs were made, and the increased maintenance this past year or so, I think, is suggesting that it might be a higher priority than we had said recently. So, I would think that request will be on there soon.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then the last one is just on the personnel side. I understand the decrease in salaries for kind of the resets of the teen librarian and the digital librarian and whatnot, kind of resetting back to their starting pay grades, and the increase obviously for the director level. But I did a quick look at the assistant director, and it looks like it's increasing by 0.05%. Is that contractual? Is it an oversight, or is that just sort of the way things are going? Step 8 employee. So that's the highest step, pay step. So contractually, we're in this in between where the hi Kitty, it's the union. That's a union position, and so we're kind of stuck where this 1 year long pay amount is applicable, and so whatever negotiations happen,
will be factored into her pay in the future. But we don't know during the budgeting process, so that amount reflects the current rate until there's a new contract on paper. And at that point, if there's a difference, the amount would be made up, and maybe Karen can say better than me, but through the salary reserve fund would be my understanding. So if there's a difference for those union employees, that's where it would come from.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Karen, I see that you unmuted.
He's correct. He's
All right.
absolutely correct. Any increases in the union contract would be funded through the salary reserve.
And that's going to be true also of the Council on Aging?
Correct.
Yeah, because that one, there was like a 0 increase across the payroll lines, I think, so. Peter?
My question was related to that. I was going to jump in with the salary reserve answer if it didn't come up, but my question would be, and I don't think we're in any danger of hitting that 16% threshold when that adjustment is made. I think we're probably far enough over that wouldn't be a triggering event.
Good question. With the two lines together, I think we do have cushion room there. Off the top of my head, I don't know if I did that math, but there's a little bit of a cushion there. Yes.
All right.
Are there any other questions for Muir?
Just a quick one. Which union is the assistant library director in?
It's the clerical union, AFSCME.
The clerical unions.
Clerical union. Yep.
Okay, well, with that, Muir, thank you very much. Great job.
My pleasure. Thank you for hosting me.
And we'll see you, I guess, I don't know when we'll see you, actually. I guess town meetings, so.
I hope it will be soon, but if I don't see you soon. Okay, come
Yeah.
visit the library. See me there.
There you go. All right,
Make
Thank
an
you, guys. Good night.
good night. All right, Adam's probably dozing.
I haven't fallen asleep yet. It's like being in a planning board meeting.
Oh, it's planning board meeting tonight?
No, it's just like being at one though,
Oh, okay.
for us.
Yeah,
So-
you've got something really weird going on with your sound.
Good, bad,
Bad?
bad. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think you did.
Over modulating or something.
Well, I didn't bring a presentation because my salary is mostly office supplies and people, and our services are what they are. We're reactive to permits that people submit, and we keep plugging along. We've had a pretty standard year. Our building permits have actually been up numerically by about 20%. Conservation, I don't have an actual percentage, but it feels as busy, if not slightly busier. I think with everyone being at home, everybody's got lots of projects to do, so they're permitting through those. If you go through line by line, there are some minor changes to address trends that we're seeing, increases in postage, reductions in printing needs. I think the one out of target request was under the building department in the publications line item. You'll see it goes up about 190%. And that is kind of a scary percentage to see, but numerically it's an additional $700. And what that's for is the International Code Council, who writes all the building codes, is on a 3-year cycle, and Massachusetts has been on a 6-year cycle with them. So in 2015, Massachusetts adopted that code. They skipped the 2018 code, and the anticipation is that they'll adopt the 2021 code. In doing that, we need to purchase $1,500 or so worth of code books. that reflect the 2021 code. So that $700 increase would take the standard $800 that we usually have for building publications and would balance that out to allow us to purchase those code books. You'll see it there. It's 531017.
Mhm.
Other than that, all the numbers are within the town manager's target. This past year, even with the working from home through March through June or so, we've been relatively busy with people, again, doing projects. I don't know that I'm going to try and answer some of the questions I know you've already asked. Our turn-ins back to the town, my mileage is going to be significantly down. I would imagine some meeting in school numbers might be down just because a lot of these professional development that a lot of us would go to that are often conferences and large meetings aren't happening. And if they are happening, they're either being done on Zoom at a free or reduced cost. And, with that, as we wind down towards the end of the year, we may reassess if there are one-time costs or needs, technological or otherwise, that we could transfer that money to use. But there may be some coming back from those lines.
Okay, and then basically for your, for this budget, this represents the base costs to the town. And that if somebody was coming in for permitting, there would be additional costs that would be paid for through the permit process. Is that?
That's correct. So as you apply for permits, there are fees for those permits, which are deposited to the general fund, which are intended to balance or supply this budget through the coming fiscal years.
Okay, so it does offset your budget. Okay.
That's the intent. We're not allowed to make money from permitting or other fees. Our requirement is that we charge something that reasonably matches our costs, our time, the overhead costs of electricity, building, et cetera, that we have.
Okay. Dave?
Yep, two line items that didn't really jump out at me, but gave me pause and a couple questions. What's it under? It looks like it's under General Expenses Planning Board. Update of maps. I'm assuming that those are, well, actually, if you could tell me what those are and what the upgrade is.
So update maps would be if there are going to be zoning changes or other significant changes to the zoning map, there's a cost to having that change made by Cartographic Associates and then having maps printed that we would post in conspicuous places. There are no anticipated zoning changes coming, and there are significant advertising needs that we have found over the past several years. So we thought it was important to transfer that money to the advertising line item.
Okay, great. Thank you. In relation to maps, I think I heard rumor, and please correct me right away if I'm wrong, that you are involved with something related to getting GSI maps on the assessor map access updated. Is that correct, or was that just something somebody said that wasn't exactly true?
Well, we have purchased a license for GIS, and that will allow us to create maps and data. It was purchased with the intent of being able to view data that our contractors generate, because currently we have a stormwater contractor or a consultant who works on the phase 2 permit with us. And this contract, we've had a great success with the person we're working with now. The previous consultant that we had was constantly submitting data to us in a format that we couldn't view. So the GIS license is like, I think it's $500 for the year. And that would allow us to view it. And as we move forward, it will allow some creation of maps. In addition, there has been work with Cartographic Associates that allows for the town to create staff sites, which are specific information behind a password protected wall on the public GIS site. So if the senior center wanted to create a map of people who had oxygen, that in the event of a catastrophic electrical loss, they could know where they were and go and check on them. They could create that and it wouldn't be visible to the public, but the people, either the fire department or the police department or the senior center, could look at those and have access so they could verify that where the electricity was out was affecting these 3 or 4 people and be able to check on them. I don't know if I think that answers your question, I hope.
That goes around it a little bit. And I think I'm going to have to pursue this somewhere else. And I'm guessing it's going to be the assessors and when Heather gives her presentation for the town side budget. But in the boards and commissions and committees that I'm on, I use GIS maps through the Board of Assessors webpage almost every day. And I'm going to say at least 50% of the lots that I look at and I'm looking for information are not up to date by many years. And
What manner of information? Just out of curiosity.
Ownership,
Okay.
page and
Book and
page.
Okay.
Town properties especially are horrendously behind. The old high school is still on the map for that plot.
And so I'll tell you what that is that was a program that was done. The building layers is something that is an algorithmic program that has to be run over an aerial photograph. So there's a significant cost to updating that, which is why you find that from a building layer, those are off a lot. The aerial photography is updated much more regularly. We'll have a better view. And I can't speak to the ownership and the book and page. I think that's all based on the master address table, and the updated schedule for that, I think, is probably a question better for the assessors.
Okay, that's fine. I kind of figured I'd have to go that direction, but I figured I'd ask that question anyway. The other one that jumped out at me is just being out of place in my mind, and it's a minuscule amount for $360. Who wears uniforms?
The building commissioner.
He does. Okay.
He does.
Okay. Thank you.
Peter?
Yeah, thanks. So the line item budget that the town manager distributed to us includes the Conservation Commission, the Planning Board, the ZBA, and the building inspector.
That's correct.
Organizationally, do the people that work for those functions report to you?
Yes,
Okay. And the Board of Assessors is separate? They
are. They report to the town manager.
The town manager through the finance department or something along those lines?
Yes, I believe that they do fall within the finance department.
Okay.
I would have to verify that, but
Karen would know.
And,
That's true.
okay.
That's
thank
true.
you.
Okay.
And are the Conservation Commission, Planning Board, and ZBA consulted about these budgets?
generally they have not been consulted. These are office budgets day to day. The conservation administrator was consulted about his budget. The ZBA budget is essentially the clerical and the advertising. So it's a day-to-day function budget as opposed to anything that the ZBA is doing. We do work to include school funds so that they can take classes as necessary if they so desire. I know that in the time that I've been here, I have had a number of planning board members take advantage of the Citizen Planner Training Collaborative conferences and classes, and the town has always paid for those. And I know that there are some conservation commissioners who are very active in pursuing education through the Mass Association of Conservation Commissions.
And basically, actually, I just not to, well, I don't mean to interrupt, but I will anyway. One of the things that's not represented on this budget at all is going to be, there are other sources of funding that are available to the Planning Board and Conservation Commission, which are not represented here. Is that correct?
The planning board does have a capital item for master planning, and the Conservation Commission has at least one, if not two revolving funds that are for maintenance and purchase of lands.
All right, and then basically through the Montechusett Regional, that's basically, there's no funding available through that, but there is access. Is that how that works?
To the Regional Planning Commission?
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't provide us with direct cash funding. They run a district local technical assistance program, which the town manager has used extensively and has benefited the planning board in several instances. That is generally an application process, so it's more similar to a grant. And they offer and provide distribution of federal transportation dollars, as well as they offer the ability to directly contract with them for planning services, but that is at a fee similar to private consultants, but it's a government to government contract.
Okay, I'm sorry, Peter, go ahead.
I think I'm good. Thank you. I do have a comment, which is I do think that, and it probably would require less time than we've invested on the topic here tonight. But I do generally think that boards and commissions have a degree of oversight, or should have a degree of oversight into the budgets that are being allocated on their behalf. And that may be something as simple as an email. It may not even require an agenda item, but I do think that there's a certain amount of responsibility that board members and commissioners have, that they should be involved and at least have some sort of approval, even if it's just approval by ignorance, but they should be informed of what's happening from a budget perspective and be made aware of it.
I can appreciate that comment.
I agree. Are there any other questions for Adam? Seeing none, Adam, I think we can cut you loose.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you,
Good night,
you too.
Adam.
Here.
Adam's always short and sweet. I don't know why I didn't invite him to go first. Do we have any finance director reports there, Karen?
No, I don't.
Oh, that was a quick one. Okay. All right. Does anybody have any questions on any of those budget items for Karen while she's here? Actually, if there's, I should open that up as well. Seeing none.
Pertaining to the budget items for tonight, is that the question you're asking, Terry? Or
Yeah, well, Karen's here since, basically she's.
well, I do have a question for Karen. It's
Okay.
not necessarily pertaining to the budget, but I do have a question. It's really pertaining to next week's discussion with the consultants. Is there anything that we need to discuss in advance of that? Will they have the information, certainly relative to the debt financing questions that we're bound to ask in advance of that meeting?
Well, I know as far as, well, I'll start with the OPEB. Parker Elmore actually sent his presentation to me today. I think if I did it right, it should be on your OneDrive right now. I uploaded it during the meeting.
Okay.
So his presentation is there. David Eisenthal, our financial advisor, has put together some schedules. I'm not sure if they totally are in line with the email that I received from you for the start dates of the projects, because before we even got that email from you, we had talked to him and had him put together some scenarios for the Passios building and the Turkey Hill Elementary School, but it starts the projects a little bit later than what you had in the email that you sent to us. But I mean, that
That's okay.
changed. I did forward Terry's email as well to David with yours, so he has an idea of the types of questions that will be addressed during that meeting. And like I said, I do have those spreadsheets. Heather hadn't seen them yet, and she was on vacation this week, so I kind of wanted to let her see them first, because this was the second round, because the first time he sent it, he kind of interpreted our policy, our debt policy, a little bit different than what it was, and he wasn't taking into account the net debt when he was calculating the percentages.
Yep.
So he revamped the spreadsheets and sent them back to us, and I just got those, I think it was probably yesterday, and I honestly haven't had a chance to go through them, but I will be sure that you all receive. What I'll do is, if that OPEB presentation is on your OneDrive, I can also upload the debt schedules that he provided to us on the OneDrive as well prior to the meeting, so you can all take a look at it before.
That would be great. There was a comment made at the TC Passios Building Committee meeting by I believe it was the chairman of that committee this week, that he had a conversation with the town manager about financing scenarios for the building as currently proposed by the architects, and that she thought that it could work. Both projects could work within policy. And I'm paraphrasing his comments, but if that's the case, I'm very anxious to see that math. So,
well, with just a quick look at the funding schedules that David did put together, I can tell you that if they were, well, obviously they would both be excludable debt, and it appears that there may be just a few years where the excludable debt exceeds the policy, but by less than 1%. And then the overall debt, I believe, is fine for the full period of both bonds.
I think that the magic variable here is the interest rate, right?
And I can tell you his interest rates varied from, I think for the short term, for the bands that he was anticipating that we would issue, they were at 2.5%, and I believe the bonds ranged from 3 to, I want to say, probably no higher than 4% for the life of the bonds.
Yeah, I mean, which
I could be wrong, but
it's totally feasible and believable for the TC Passios project. For the Turkey Hill project, I mean, we just don't know.
well, and then the other question is, I believe in the scenarios that he did, the terms that he used were 30 years, and would we want to go out 30 years on either one of those projects?
Yeah, so those are questions. Those are discussions we'll have to have next week. Okay, that's very enlightening. Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome.
Karen, I'm not seeing it unless you put it in a folder that I'm not looking at in the OneDrive.
I don't know where I put it. You know what? I don't like that OneDrive thing. I thought it was there, and then I went in and I couldn't find it either. But then I uploaded it again, and It
Been
was
sent to
there
the-
when I left the site, but
The Mars rover has it.
I'll email it to you guys. That's the easier. At least I know you get it, and then you can do whatever you want with it.
That sounds perfect, Karen. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, basically last week, we put off approving minutes. Hopefully you folks have had a chance to review the minutes that were available last week. And I see that minutes were added to the OneDrive yesterday. I don't know if people had a chance to look at those. Okay.
I looked
Evan,
at all three.
you looked at all three? Okay. So basically then, I'm prepared to take a motion on the minutes from December 10th, January 14th, and January 21st.
Before
Did
we-
everyone look at all three?
I did not.
There's an issue with all three of them too, I think. At least the ones that I looked at. All three of them show the same. After we have adjournment, then there's also another section of
Oh, I have to take that out. Okay.
and adjournment on all three of them where Dave Rogers complains about not being able to hear.
You probably did it all.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
well,
Probably happened every
Don't
meeting.
blame David.
Really?
But it's on all three of them at least. But that's the only thing that I found.
Okay, so, right, yes, I see it now.
Well, that's when you guys go in and clean it up.
All right, so we didn't delete those.
We
Oh,
can
I see.
prove them pending removal of that, right?
Yeah.
We can- we
Yeah.
can
How hard is that to clean up?
Make an approval pending amendments. We've done that.
Is that your motion, Peter?
Yes.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, Chris Menard,
Aye.
Jay Simeone,
I'll abstain. I haven't looked at them yet.
Dave Passios,
Aye.
Peter Beardmore,
Aye.
Evan Waters,
Aye.
Heather Soroka,
I,
and I for myself. Thank you, Heather. Actually, it's funny because there's a big enough space that I stopped. I never even scrolled down to see that there was more.
I printed
and,
it
and
out.
the whole reason that they're on OneDrive is so that everyone can make
Yeah,
additions
but I
and
just
changes.
scan it like, okay.
Like,
What I mean, like,
that could have just been done. Somebody could have done that.
Yeah, okay, Evan, now you know that you have permission when you go into
We actually-
OneDrive and you see
we
a
can
change.
do
Yeah,
that.
it's not for me
Yeah.
to do. It's for you guys. That's why it's on OneDrive.
And
I
then
can see
basically
stuff in.
and then we would just ask you to bring it to our attention at the time of the meeting.
Yeah.
In case we
Okay.
didn't see it.
Yeah, I'll be happy to.
Heather, thank you for writing them.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank
Yes,
you.
Heather, thank you so much. All right, then with that, committee or department reports?
Who wants to go first?
Oh my gosh.
I guess I'll jump in and I'll make them as short as possible. Parks Department met last Friday. Had a number of agenda items. Most noteworthy was discussion about hunting on parks properties, and we voted a policy on that. And we are working on other field use policies and fees and stuff like that. The planning for the opening of the town beach in the spring is already underway. Paperwork that's required to go to the state is being filled out and will be submitted in the next week or two. And advertising and hiring is going to be happening in March. Programming's been going fairly well. It's been a little frustrating with some of the programming not having enough participation to actually run the winter programs. But some of the indoor stuff, like basketball at Passios, I guess, has gone. The ones that have already happened were well attended and well enjoyed. There was one other key thing there, and I've lost it for the moment. If I get it back before I finish, I will come back to it on parks. TC Passios Design Committee meeting Wednesday night. We met as a committee only. We asked the architects and engineers not to attend so that we could really spend some time, excuse me, drilling down on the proposals that the original proposal dollar amount that they gave us 3 or 4 weeks ago. They submitted an adjusted program that saved a little bit of money, but really not a lot. We've sent questions back to them asking why there wasn't more substantial savings, and some of the things that we had talked about would be things to do to save money on that project. So on March 3rd, we are going to, our intent is to have some final numbers that, and decide where we're going to go with those numbers. Pretty much the gist of the conversation with the committee was that our next step beyond that meeting would be to bring it to the Board of Selectmen, have a joint meeting with them, and tell them that, okay, this was our charge. Here is the proposal. These are the numbers. And what's our next step? So that's pretty much it for both. That's it for tonight.
Okay. Anybody else? No? Okay. Does anybody want to talk about policies needing review tonight? Shall we just pass on it since it's 2.5 hours in?
Terry, I did find that last item, and it's just a mention at this point because we're very early in the development of it. But if we are ready, Parks will be putting in an article for Springtown meeting to change the type of revolving account that the revenues coming into Parks goes through. And I'll just say that presently we're operating under a 53D that has some limitations that we're not comfortable with, and we're looking to convert to a 53E.5. And there'll be much more information about that available before town meeting.
That would be helpful.
Yep.
Okay. Do we have any public comment from anybody on the committee? Do we have any public comment from anybody in the public? Then, seeing none, again, next meeting, next week on the 25th, we'll be getting together starting at 6 p.m. So I guess, yeah, try not to forget. And I spent the whole day thinking tonight was 6 o'clock, so.
Yeah, I tried to sign on at 6 and Zoom told me that, no, you can't do that yet.
Well, thank God I'm not the only one. All right. So with that, then I'd be more than happy to accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Got everybody making the motion. Anybody want to second it?
Second.
Okay, so we got Dave with the motion, Jay with the second, and all in favor. Heather,
Aye.
Evan,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Jay,
Aye.
Chris. I gave you all that time to unmute, and I for myself, thank you. Have a great night. See you all next week.
Good night, everyone.
Night,
Aye.
everybody.